today I'm going to talk about my favourite fantasy films, which you can find a list of this up on Letterboxd, which I'll put a link to. The reason I've been doing these lists, the reason I'm doing them is just a kind of simple thing of just looking at what your favourite fantasy films is. It can be kind of fun just to see what ones actually are your favourites, and I just looked at what I rated the highest on my Letterboxd list for that genre, and then just chose the ones I thought were the best examples of films I love. It's not everything too seriously. I'm sure some of these will change over time. I'm not tied to anything. I view fantasy as something that can never happen in real life. Where the logic of it all is, it can be lots of things. It can be kind of almost science fiction, but it's too absurd to what we think of now as science that it no longer really applies anymore. To the presentation of it being more fantastical, even if some of it could happen, most of it probably couldn't. There's no explanation to it. It's always like you see a film, that's a fantasy film. Now some films that are science fiction, like Star Wars, that there's so much fantasy in it, but it's still with a science fiction feel to it. I'm not going to them. It's like my first choice is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is a Jules Verne novel adaptation. It is about submarines, it is about going underwater and with breathing suits and things, which we can do now. But the whole thing of him creating a war with the land and trying to live on the seabed and all that's very fantastical. And the presentation of the film is not a kind of science fiction version of this story by Richard Fleischer. It's just not. It's a fantasy version. And that's why it's my fantasy thing. But I'm not going to go into much detail about any of these films. This is just like a kind of general cover for a series I'm going to do about different films in different genres. It's much more like to try and see, you should watch these films. Try this one. Try that one. That kind of thing. It's nothing too deep. So next is The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, which is a Terry Gilliam film from 89, right, or 1988, depending on where you saw it, depending on when it was released. In Britain it was 89. It was dumped by the studio, cost a fortune, made by the studio head who was fired, David Putnam. So the next people came in and just dumped it. It got good reviews, and it's actually one of those films that has lasted really well. It's become something special over time. And it is, the last purely joyful Gilliam film, I think. I mean, after this, we went into Fisher King, it was a bit darker. Then he went into 12 Monkeys, it was darker, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And since then, and in the 2000s, there's been a general depression flowing through his films. And this was the last one. It was just genuinely, even though there's some darker elements, there was genuine warmth to it. That thing's been kind of lost as Gilliam's dealt with Hollywood and financiers and just the general world. So it's kind of sad if you were originally a fan of Gilliam, see where the films have gotten more and more depressing. Next is Army of Darkness, the third Evil Dead film. This one's silly as hell. This one's just wonderfully fun. It's got just a delight in silliness is the best way to put it. Some people like bits better than other bits. Some people like the middle section better. Some people like the later section better. Some people like the early section better. I think it's just a delight. It's just so silly. I saw it when it came out in the cinema, which was quite nice to see it. I mean, I've seen quite a few of these films in the cinema, Bad Munchausen as well. And they are films you want to see on a big screen. They've just got something about them. They're big screen experiences. Even though this is lower budget for a studio film and had some effects that are gleefully tacky. Raimi loves the tacky effects as well as the sophisticated ones. He likes the silliness of the special effects. He likes pointing out how silly they are looking sometimes. And this film has that delight as well as having some great fantasy sequences. So, I mean, it's no way a horror film, it's a fantasy film, and it's a comedy, and it's just a lot of fun. So now I'm going to Avatar, which has some science fiction elements, but still I would classify as a fantasy film. You're going to a foreign land where you've got strange blue creatures and they're fighting the humans. So it's doing everything of a fantasy, but it's got the thing of, oh, it's humans going to another planet and creating these avatars that can go and interact with people. And I'm choosing The Way of Water because I liked Way of Water more than the first Avatar. I haven't seen the new one enough, but I can really enjoy the new one. So I'm choosing The Way of Water, but it kind of covers most of the Avatar films. I enjoy them. Yes, the dialogue can be tacky. Yes, it wears its heart on its sleeve sometimes. And yes, they're very long films, but I enjoy them. I have fun with them. I think they're good fantasy movies. Because fantasy movies don't have to be deep all the time. And these films actually know that they're fun films as well as being having a message. They're a bit of both. And I think if they're just message based, they wouldn't be successful. And I think if there's no message, they wouldn't be successful. I think it's a nice mix. But they're not well loved, you know. But I'm quite happy to see I enjoy them and defend them because I think they're worth defending. And I think a lot of people just try to be easily snobbish about them. So we're going to Babe Pig in the City, which is the George Miller film. I could have chosen Babe, but Pig in the City is darker and weirder and everyone hates it. And I love it, and it's just so much fun seeing this poor pig dealing with the depravity of the big city and all the animals, the big city animals in this hotel, and it's just so much fun. It's hyper as hell. It's not for everybody, but these are my favourites, so I don't care. Next we have Batman Returns, which I talked about a little bit on the Nazarene podcast, or Nazarene Ronin podcast yesterday, or my favourite films of the 90s. So I won't go into any details here. Go and see that. I'll leave a link at the bottom on the description just to give you an idea of what that one is. It's a really fun dark movie that scares the children. It's the best Batman movie for me. It's got great characters. It's got great fantasy elements. The world is, again, the Batman, they try and take it too seriously and make it a real world thing. And I'm like, it's Batman. It's a guy trying to save the city. It's an absurd situation. It's fantasy. Just get over the fact it's fantasy and enjoy the fantasy elements of it. Next up is Beauty and the Beast, the 1940s version, the famous version, Cocteau. This is wonderful. I'm not sure what to say about it. It's wonderful. Just go see it. It's been ripped off by the Hollywood versions of it as well. There's another version that Saoirse Ronan loves. But I prefer this one. Even though that one's very good too. I just like this one. It's sometimes things are simple. Sometimes things I thought are the best because they are the best. It's, I'm sure everyone will love that comment. Then we have Belle de Jour, the Buñuel film. I adore it. It's a fantasy about our sexual fantasies and how we relate to each other as people and how we relate to each other as objects and some of the crazy stuff that goes on in our heads, men and women. It's delightful. It's funny. You should all go watch and then go to a psychiatrist. Now The Cat Returned, which is a film I only saw last year, but it's delightful. It's about a girl who is suddenly engaged to a cat and has to go to Catland and investigate why she's been engaged with a cat because of an act of kindness she did to the cats in the real world, and she has to hire a cat detective to try and work out the mystery of what's going on and what the problem is, and it's just a pure delight. I mean, from the explanation, it's a fantasy. Studio Ghibli film. It's wonderful. Again, just try and see it and know as little as possible. It's just beautiful. Celine and Julie go boating. Rivette film, wonderful. Do not know anything about it before you can see it. Just go and watch it. Two girls going through Paris and getting into fantasy situations. It's a beautiful film. It's charming. You don't need to know what's going on in the film. Just experience it. Is my best way to put it. Just to have the experience. Now, The Company of Wolves. Neil Jordan's film about, stories within stories of wolves and Little Red Riding Hood, based on Angela Carter short stories. It's wonderful. It's hard to explain. Again, it's an experience film. You have to experience it. You have Terence Stamp as the devil in one wonderful scene. You get lots of things about burgeoning sexuality and girls going to becoming women, and how like, the werewolf and the beast within, and all of those stories align to that and create meaning with that. So it's just a wonderful film. It's one of Neil Jordan's best films still. It's just so beautifully done. Now we go to Conan the Barbarian, which is a John Milius fantasy. This is one of the most violent films on the list. Schwarzenegger's debut as an action star. He'd been in Stay Hungry and documentary. This is his first he got the part because no one else could play the part because he had to build for the part and it was he had to charm, even though he didn't have really the acting chops. But Milius worked around that and made the film in a world that never existed, full of witches, full of demons, full of a cult leader, Thulsa Doom, played by James Earl Jones. It's a story of revenge for a man who lost his family in childhood, and it's a story of Conan becoming Conan. And there's wonderful lifts from Qui-Gon, and there's wonderful lifts from various fantasy stories. There's also very Milius, very violent, dark, weird humour, over the top acting at times. It's addictive. I've seen this film countless times. Yes, it can be ridiculous, but it's wonderful for that. It wouldn't be half as much fun if it wasn't ridiculous. Now we have Daisies, another a film that Ronan does not so keen on, but I adore. It's two women going through the strange, fantastical world of repressed Eastern Bloc countries under, communism, and how they're much more human these worlds than actually you'd think, and it's always them cheating their way through life in different ways, and it's hard to explain, but it's a delight. It's a pure delight. Go see it. It's wonderful. Now we have two Fritz Lang films. We have Die Nibelungen Part 1 and Part 2. The first one's more fantastical with Siegfried. The second one's revenge for the death of Siegfried. The first one is wonderful Fantasyland storytelling that is done a mega budget for Germany at the time. Yes, some of the effects don't hold up now, but if you love old effects, they're a delight. The second film is The Revenge, which is when Fritz Lang goes dark and brutal, he goes dark and brutal, and it's wonderful to see how just dark he can make a mainstream film. These are great films. Go watch them. Now with Excalibur, I've talked about this one countless times. King Arthur, John Boorman, just got in 4K. It's wonderful. The world it creates is great. It's got a sense of humour about how absurd this can be, but also has the sense of myth, the sense of how powerful this myth is. It does so much. It's so many tones, and it all pulls them all off. And it's one of John Boorman's great films. I adore it with a passion. Next, we have Exterminating Angel, another Buñuel film. A group of people go to dinner and can't leave the room they were in, and it's about them trying to find ways to leave the room they were in, and it's all about the craziness of the rich and the pretentious, and just the weird supernatural feeling that we have about people, about each other, and about how we have to try and survive in life, all the absurdities of life, and all the absurdities we put on life. So it's a fantasy about, and in concept, it's also about our own fantasies about ourselves in life. So it's just delightful. Now we have Eyes Wide Shut, the Kubrick film. I've talked this a lot. I don't know if I can go on about it again. It's wonderful. It's about sexual fantasies, and there's a bit jealousy of husbands and wives, and a bit of crazy industrialized sex world of the rich as well, which now it's all come to the fore with the Epstein Files. Everyone thought this was outrageous when it first came out, and now it looks very tame. So there we go. Now we have the fabulous Baron Munchausen, the Zeman film. Another Baron Munchausen, another delightful film. It's very different from the Gilliam film. It's much lower budget. It's using more basic props. It's made in Eastern Bloc. It's wonderful. Try and know as little about it as possible before you go into it. I'm just thinking of images from it. Everyone's like, nah, I better not see anything else. Now more now with Faust. Faust is great. I was one of my first videos about Faust. I covered it. It's an amazing film about temptation, about the purest soul being tempted by the devil and how he's redeemed by love. It's a fairy story done by a master. Just delightful. Pen Fatale, I've covered this multiple times. Even this week in a video, I've kind of mentioned it. About a thief who is on the run, dreams of a new life for herself, and it's reality and unreality come together. The funny thing is, the supposed reality feels more dreamlike than the supposed dream, which is a nice little inversion. Which it's a delightful film. De Palma's having a lot of fun with visual imagery and characters within a strange situation. No need to defend it. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful film. Flow, which I've covered, it's about a cat going through an apocalyptic flood that's affected the world, and it's trying to survive with different animals. And it's about creatures come together to survive, then slowly coming apart again once they've survived. Delightful. Gemini, about twins who didn't know that each other existed. By Sakamoto. It's very difficult to explain. It's not a dream film, but it feels very dreamlike, you know, in the atmosphere in your head once you've seen it. It's a delightful film. Try and know as little bit much as possible. I mean, again, it's about twins is something that comes up pretty early, so don't worry about that. Now we have two Godzilla films. We have -1 and Godzilla, which I'm trying to kind of. This is a long one. Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters Attack. Two delightful films of the Godzilla franchise. Very different. One's an all-out monster mash, and one's just Godzilla coming back in World War II and after World War II and causing havoc to Japan. And it's all about the post-war Japan and how people struggled through it. So one's a kind of realistic fantasy. I don't think a Godzilla film can ever be science fiction. It's too absurd a premise. But these are the two versions of Godzilla, what you can do to create something wonderful. So that's why I put it in. So now we have Golden Voyage of Sinbad, V. Harryhausen film. A delightful fantasy about Sinbad trying to defeat Tom Baker's villain, to find, blah, blah, blah. Sinbad film doesn't matter what he's trying to find. It's about the monsters, fighting the monsters, defeating the villain who's trying to manipulate the monsters. Delightful all the way through. Just go and enjoy it. I don't think there's anything else to say about that. Just go and enjoy. Gremlins 2, an absurd fantasy about sequels. The whole idea of sequels are absurd, and this film takes the piss out of sequels in a very fantastical way of having little monsters destroy the infrastructure that creates sequels, which is, corporate America. And it's a fantasy about the absurdity of the mechanism that you're actually in watching this film. So it's a very clever film that now is getting some love. It was originally viewed as something abhorrent, like Batman Returns, but now it's well thought of. Now we have Pinocchio, the Guillermo del Toro Pinocchio, which is done from Netflix. It's now also out in Criterion 4K. It's a delightful telling of the Pinocchio tale. It's set in fascist Italy during the war. It's all about war, and it's all about Pinocchio learning to be himself and learning about death and learning about mortality, and his father learning how to deal with Pinocchio. A wonderful film. I've dealt with it on my channel. Go watch it. It's a mandatory thing. You have to have seen this film. Heart of Glass, one of my favourite films. Herzog doing a film about This community who make glass, who the glass maker dies and they don't have a secret of making the glass the way he did it, and they're slowly going mad. All the cast were hypnotised before the film, so it gives an odd pace into the film. And it has one of the best endings to a film ever. This is a delightful film. It's hard to explain why it's so good. It's just the experience of watching it. It's just so good. Heavenly Creatures is about the fantasy of what goes on in our mind when we're in love, especially when you're young. It's got a dark ending, but it is a beautiful film, and there's a lot of fancy sequences inside the minds of these girls as they are imagining a world of their own making that's they've escaped from the real world. Peter Jackson directed it. It's delightful. Another October film now, we've got Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. I could have done Hellboy, but Hellboy 2 is more of a fantasy film. It's about Hellboy going into the real world and discovering the real world is much more difficult than the fantasy world he kind of created in his mind, because he was always in the real world but protected by the government. Now everyone knows he exists, and he has to deal with a prince who wants to destroy the world because mankind is horrible, which is true, but you know, that's a bit much. And the Golden Army is a thing that's going to come out with creatures who can never be defeated, and they will just destroy the humans. Lovely film, very pulpy, very much based on old pulp stories, and it actually is shameless with that. It delights in that. House, you know, the delightful 70s Japanese film about schoolgirls going to a house that's haunted, and it's all very weird and technically a horror film, but it's really a fantasy film. You know, it's you can't take it seriously. It's not scary at all. It's delightful. So, yeah, it's extended fantasy genre for me. Into the Vampire. Yes, some vampire films are horror movies. This one is more of a dark fantasy about living as a vampire. Tom Cruise is Lestat. Brad Pitt is Louis. Who are bitching each other through centuries. Kirsten Dunst as their daughter, vampire daughter. It's delightful and weird and depressed. And just one of those odd films that you can't believe get made with major stars and major studio. Which is one of the reasons why it's wonderful it exists. There's now a TV show version which I don't care about. I was never even a fan of the novel. I just liked this film. You know, I thought the novel was pretty boring, but the film I really enjoy. Now on to Jason Argonauts. Jason Argonauts is Ray Harryhausen legend. Jason going to find the Golden Fleece and all his adventures with Hercules and all the rest. It's a delightful film. Again, seen the biggest screen as possible. It's one for all the family. It never ages. If you hate it, you're a monster. Yeah. Another journey into the beginning of time is another one. If you hate it, you're a monster. Children go on a river trip, and it takes them back in time. So they end up seeing dinosaurs and going further and further back. It's a wonderful film. It's just so delightful. I can't say any more beyond just go watch it. King Kong, the original King Kong, it's essential. It took the Beauty and the Beast myth and did its own thing with it. It's still been imitated. You're still getting Kong films. This is stop motion Kong, and it makes it better. Just put the stop motion. It's just delightful. All the way through, delightful. I'll let you go and rewatch it after watching this video. Yeah. Now we go to Lancelot de Lac, which is the Bresson version of the fantasy of King Arthur, which means everything's realistic, but because everything's realistic and depressed and underplayed, it still feels like weird sort of fantasy. It brings out the fantasy elements even though there's no fantasy elements. It's really hard to explain, but it is a great fantasy film where the director's fighting against the fantasy all the way through. So again, go see it. It's wonderful. Legend of the Eight Samurai. It's Fukusaki. Fukushima. Sorry, Fukushima. That's the film I watched. Fukusaki. I always get the guy's name. wrong, and I'll get it wrong again. Director of Battle Royale and New Battles for Honor and Humanity. This is a delightful film. I saw it recently. I adore it. It's based on a Japanese legendary story, epic tale that was written through many books. It's basically they're going to try and get all these warriors together to fight an evil injustice of these like undead creatures that have come back, have taken over a castle, and are going to try and spread their evil. Basically, a fantasy idea, but done really, really well. Yeah. Legends of the Mountain, a King Hu film, more fantastical than the normal kung fu. Go see it. Don't know anything about it. Just go watch it. It's better that way. Plus, I couldn't explain this plot anyway, so I'm not going to try. I've done a video whenever I tried to explain it, and I probably failed horribly. Now, Lord of the Rings, I'm only doing one Lord of the Rings film because there's so many of them. That's Two Towers. That's my favourite Lord of the Rings film. It's a lot of people's favourite Lord of the Rings film because it's about the struggle of the journey and not the destination. I think it is the darkest one, but it does that thing of having the darkest one actually work, which is very hard to do. I mean, Empire Strikes Back did it, Two Towers did it, and very few other films I've tried have done it. So it's much harder than it looks. Now we go to Lost Highway, David Lynch film. Some would call it a horror film. I think it's a fantasy film. It's a dark fantasy film about a guy uncomfortable with his life and uncomfortable with his decisions, and he's morphing into other people, and nothing makes sense in a normal way, but it makes sense in a dreamlike way. So I'm calling it dark fantasy. It doesn't feel like a horror movie to me. It's got scary moments in it, but it feels more fantasy to me. Love and Peace, which is the Sono film, delightful, wonderful film. It's hard to explain. Just go watch it. It's heartwarming. It's absurd, and again, do not know anything about it. Just go watch it. Mad God, Phil Tippett movie. Another one. Do not learn anything about it before you watch it. It's much darker than Love and Peace. It's a really dark film in stop motion. Alex Cox is in it. It's delightful, and we love stop motion. It's very dark, and you won't see any film like it. Next to Matinee, which is the opposite. Again, it's more like Love and Peace. It's about the Cuban Missile Crisis seen through the eyes of a kid who loves horror movies in the 60s. And he loves special type of exploitation horror movies. And into his town comes John Goodman as a huckster William Castle type director. It's a fantasy of life under stress, and there's all the fantasy of movies and how movies can heal you. It's wonderful. Now, the Archer's Matter of Life and Death, delightful film about a guy who dies, should have died but doesn't, and now he's coming back. Now death is trying to bring him back to the afterlife, and he's trying to argue for himself that he shouldn't go back. He should, because he's just fallen in love with someone. He wants to continue that. So it's about trying to argue with death that death should be postponed. Delightful romance, just wonderful. David Niven and Kim Hunter are great together as a couple. Just such a good film. Mulholland Drive, another David Lynch film, another one I call a fantasy around a horror movie, because it's a fantasy about your identity, what you are in life, and the movies, and how the movies can corrupt you. Yeah, there are horror moments in it, but it feels more like dark fantasy to me. It feels much more like the craziness going on in your head rather than anything definite supernatural. Now, the supernatural is there, but it always feels personal to the craziness going on in your head. Back to Studio Ghibli with My Neighbor Totoro. Lovely film. But a little girl and her sister and the creature that protects them. The fantasy creature protects them, no one can see. While the mother is sick in hospital. Just delightful. It's hard to explain beyond that. Just go watch it. That's what's good about fantasy films. A lot of time it's just go watch it. because I can't explain what's great about it. It just is. Here's another one. Only Lovers Left Alive. Jim Jarmusch. Another vampire tale about the vampire surviving in life and what they go through. And again, I'd call it a dark fantasy rather than a horror movie. It's not scary. It's not trying to be scary. It's about the lives of these creatures. So I would call it a dark fantasy. It's delightful. Go watch it. Phoenician Scheme, the new Wes Anderson film, is about a huckster trying to create his own redemption through various schemes, which means he's doing things that are up to no good the way he used to do them, but he's trying to do them for a good cause. So it's a wonderful, delightful film. The way Wes Anderson works within reality and fantasy, where reality is a fantasy that we have created amongst ourselves. It's great. Just a wonderful film. Now, The Prestige, the Christopher Nolan film about magicians and magic and science and trick. It's all about how we trick ourselves into fantasies about what the reality is about our lives and how we create monsters of ourselves due to needs we don't actually even understand half the time, and how the fantasy of a trick can seduce us into bad decisions. I think it's Nolan's best film. It is wonderful. Princess Bride, which is a Rob Reiner film based on William Goldman book about a love between two people in this story called The Princess Bride that's actually been told to a young boy by his grandfather, and it's just a delightful fantasy romance comedy. Great jokes throughout, just wonderfully paced. Everyone's probably seen it by now. Right. Now we're going to Privilege, which is Peter Watkins' film, which is about the fantasy of pop stars, of fantasy of stars, and how they're actually a construction, ultimately, of the government wanting you to actually be invested in this. Like this guy in this character in this film is a constructed pop star to focus people's attention on the glamour of the fantasy that he's selling them, rather than the actual reality and actually rising against the government saying you have to do better. You create a kind of pop star and you create a fantasy for them to get attached to, the same way they'll be attached to footballers or, actors or filmmakers or anything. Just a fantasy that creates advertising for, not questioning. So, wonderful film. Very underrated. Now another Sono film, Red Post and Esher Street, all about the creation of a film. It's all about filmmaking as the joy of fantasy, the fantasy of filmmaking. Very joyful film. It's wonderful. I can't say any more about it. Just go watch it if you can find it. It's very hard to find. It's been a very low budget. And Sono at the moment is not popular in Japan due to his personal life, but this is worth one worth checking out. Another film about fantasy of creation is Red Shoes, Michael Powell, Emmett Pressburger. It's delightful, but it's also about the dark side, the obsessive side of fantasy, and what you do to follow your fantasy and what you do to create the fantasies in your head that you need to survive, and the kind of the cold side of that and the kind of dark side of that, and how you manipulate people to get these fantasies to the public, and how they're part of the problem as well. We're part of the problem by watching these fantasies. Paul Pressburger always tend to have a good sting in their tail in their best films. Okay, now we go to a very dark fantasy, which is Return to Oz. That's a fantasy that scared a lot of people. I saw it as a child. I know why it's scary. But it's also a delight. It's all about the dark side of Oz. It's all about the dark side of a fantasy world when everything's going to hell and there's just a sense of doom, and what should have been beautiful has become corrupted and almost infected by the darkness. It's a wonderful film. Just go see it. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This is a evergreen Disney film. You all know it. You all know you've seen it multiple times. Go watch it again. Now, Spider-Man 2, which is basically superheroes are fantasies. They're not real, not science fiction. They're fantasies. Some things can go into the realm of science fiction, kind of, but to me, they always feel like fantasies. So I'm including Spider-Man 2 in the best fantasy movies because it is a terrific fantasy movie about, someone trying to do the right thing and survive with powers that are beyond his ability to maturely deal with. And it's a love story, but it's also a love story about someone denying themselves love. And it's Sam Raimi being Sam Raimi doing his weird shit in a movie. And isn't that what you want to see in a movie? It's a delight. It's the best live action Spider-Man still by a long shot. Now we have Spirited Away, a Studio Ghibli film. I've been into Studio Ghibli recently. That's probably the first one of theirs I ever saw. It's wonderful. I've not watched it for years, but I'm going to rewatch it soon. But it's always been like the world it creates is just stunning. Just the atmosphere of this little girl with the fantasy land is great, and I have nothing else to say about it. Just go watch it, and I'll just take advice myself because it's been too long since I've watched it. Now we go to probably one of my favourite fantasy films on this list, which is Tales of Hoffmann, another Artus film, all about the Hoffmann Tales, and it's done as an opera, and it's obviously fantastical, and it's an anthology of tales of Hoffmann and his lost loves. Delightful. There's some scenes I just watch the sequences outside the film too because it's so well done. So yeah, delightful. Another Michael Powell film, The Thief of Baghdad. He didn't direct all of it, he directed some of it. From the 40s, or 1940. Based on Arabian Nights. It's just wonderful. Needs no explanation, just go watch it. It's a delightful film. We're getting towards the end now. Now it's Three Businessmen, Alex Cox film. It's hard to find. I've got it in DVD. I'm hoping someone will eventually release it properly. And there's only like two businessmen and talking in this hotel, which leads to a delightful ending. And it's a wonderful kind of. It starts out just feeling like very mundane film, but there was a kind of. Cox always likes the fantastical elements in his films. Just the kind of the absurdity of life done through fantasy and kind of because I think he's into like the kind of like kind of Latin American kind of surrealistic fantasy. So he puts them in his films too. This one's just wonderful. I don't want to say too much about it. Just go watch it if you can find it because it is worth it. And it's also about how we have our own stereotypes of our cultures and how we try and break free of those stereotypes of our own cultures. That is wonderful. I need to rewatch that one as well. Now we have 3,000 Years of Longing, a George Miller film that came out and no one cared about. So, yeah, again, a story's been told. Idris Elba is the kind of the genie inside the lamp, who's telling stories of the cost of his life and the cost of where he's been to Tilda Swinton, who loves stories and who's interested in stories, and she's trying to get these stories from him. And then you go back in time and see the various tragedies of life that Elba's seen, and which has made him a darker view of human beings. It's a delightful film. Not many people have watched it. And the critics were kind of a bit sniffy about it, but I think they're going to come around in time. Again, they just don't like fantasy. They don't like to admit to fantasies. It has to be at least 10, 15 years old before they admit how something good something is. And this film has got that problem. Next one is Tree of Life. Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm talking about the long version of Tree of Life. It's wonderful. It's about growing up in Texas, but it's also about the fantasy of what we expect from our families and what we need from our families, and what we expect from life and the own construction of life. Because Malik has a section of how life evolves through the universe, and there's a sense of the afterlife and what happens after you've died as well, and how you reconnect with your families, and do you have to be dead to be able to reconnect emotionally to your families, and what the fantasies of the lives we've lived already within our lives of what we viewed as other people and what we viewed as our families, and how that affects us through life. So it's a complicated film, but I would say it's a fantasy film of the kind of slight fantasy, but it's there and it's wonderful. It doesn't need to be full on Baron Munchausen fantasy to be a fantasy. You can be delightful. Next is A Trip to the Moon, the oldest film in this list. I watched it recently again. It still delights. It's very is old fashioned. It is very silly, but what's the joy of it. Next, The Truman Show, the Peter Weir film that some people class as science fiction, I class as fantasy. This would not actually happen in real life. You have like fantasy shows of like the, reality shows, but it's all scripted to keep the drama going. This is a life that has been lived with very little drama, and I'm still watching this character, Truman. I don't think that would ever happen. People would get bored, no matter how interesting he is. I think that as a fantasy, but it looks in the fantasy of us watching other people, and we put on other people to actually make sense of our lives. That's a fantasy that's actually interesting with the film, and what the film explores. So even though I think the conceit is what's the fantasy more than a reality, it does kind of reflect a reality we put ourselves through because we like our fantasies. Hence, it's a fantasy choice. Next is you get to the classic Ghost Story, which is all about the fantasy of doing well in life and getting riches with no cost, and if the fantasies of think we can leave our families defenseless and nothing's going to happen to them, and the fantasy of ghosts who are trying to reconnect with life or bring someone with them to death to give themselves some sense of life. It's a beautiful film, and it's a tragedy, and it's wonderful. So, yeah, great fantasy movie. Sometimes classed a horror movie because of ghosts in it, but I think it's a fantasy. Unseen and Andalou, they've been well filmed. It's a comedy fantasy, a bit absurd about the cinema, absurd about life. It's wonderful. I've talked about it before. I'm not going to go on about it. Up, the Pixar film. I'm not a massive Pixar fan, but Up is delightful. Again, another film I need to watch again. But a house powered by balloons that floats into Africa to find a old adventurer, and it's an old guy and a young boy and a dog, and it's just delightful. I adore this film. Valerie and a Week of Wonders, another wonderful fantasy film from the Eastern Bloc. I tried to limit these, so I didn't have tons of these, but this one you can't ignore. It's so good. Hard to explain, just go watch it. It's wonderful. Waking Life, which I've covered recently, it's wonderful. It's about the fantasy of dreaming, and it's a fantasy of life and our beliefs and what we hang on to and how we try to make sense of our lives. It's delightful, but also kind of depressed about what real life is at the same time, even within the fantasy world of your dreams. Wings of Desire, Wim Wenders' film about angels watching us in Germany and trying to make sense of human beings. It's delightful. It's a love story. Go watch it. I don't have anything to say because it's one of those self-evident films that's delightful. Finally, Wizard of Oz, another self-evident delightful film, a musical, a fantasy, a film I've seen multiple times. You saw all the time as a child. Yeah, it's still up there. It's still a great film. It's still wonderfully delightful. So I would say definitely, it's still definitely a must watch. Kind of like Snow White, you kind of need the must watch elements of these old films that you've watched multiple times. So this was quite a long video. I hope you enjoyed it. It was fun to do. So it's quite nice sometimes to look at what you really love about the genre, because it's something that's not the most obvious ones. There's some of ones that are obvious, but there's also ones that are less obvious, but they're still part of that kind of mix that makes cinema so enticing for you. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you get any ones you think are really great fantasy, just put them on the comments. I'll see you all later. Right, bye for now.